This is absolutely the most despair-inducing way to die in the world. On February 25, 2022, 5 divers were commissioned by an oil company to carry out maintenance on an underwater oil pipeline. But due to the large pressure difference inside and outside, at the moment a diver unscrewed a bolt. The long and narrow pipeline was like a black hole, sucking in all the surrounding air and seawater, as well as the 5 divers and their tanks. All of them were sucked inside. They were continuously pushed forward by the seawater, sliding through the pipeline for more than a minute, choking on countless mouthfuls of seawater before finally stopping. Although everything around them was pitch black, and there was no sound at all. Fortunately, the position here was relatively high, and had not been completely filled with seawater, leaving some oxygen for them to breathe. When several of them gradually regained consciousness, they began calling out to find their teammates. 2 of them had fractures, but most were still relatively clear-headed. The 5 fell into deep fear and despair. They clearly knew that no one would come to save them, and everything could only depend on themselves. However, inside this pipeline filled with an oil-water mixture, getting out alive was harder than climbing to the sky. Although there was some residual oxygen here, it simply would not last long, and seawater could flood in at any moment. Rather than waiting to die, they decided to take a gamble. They struggled forward, crawling slowly like a centipede. After moving with difficulty for an hour, Chris at the very front discovered that the water level seemed to be getting higher and higher. Moving forward would require diving underwater, but their oxygen tanks had long been lost. No one knew how long this stretch was. Moreover, 2 people were already injured. If any teammate lagged behind, everyone would perish together. Chris at the front could only decide to scout ahead alone. If he really managed to get out, he promised he would find help. If he did not come back, that would mean he had met with disaster. The other 4 also believed this plan was the safest option, so Chris set off alone. After crawling for about another 20 minutes, the seawater had almost completely filled the pipeline. Chris held his last breath and dove underwater, preparing for a do-or-die attempt. After about another 30 seconds, his hand suddenly touched something. Feeling it carefully, it turned out to be an oxygen tank. He was overjoyed, finally seeing hope, so he swam forward even harder. But after swimming for more than half an hour, he still had not reached the end of the pipeline, and his oxygen was about to run out. Perhaps fate was still watching over him. Chris's hand touched another oxygen tank. He shoved the hose straight into his mouth, and pushed forward through the strong smell of oil. After another 20+ minutes, Chris suddenly saw hope. He had actually reached a bend in the pipeline. He swam upward nervously yet excitedly. Life or death depended on this moment. Fortunately, Chris successfully surfaced. He desperately shouted for help. By this time, since the 5 were sucked into the pipeline, more than 2 hours had already passed. Colleagues on the ship had also noticed something was wrong, and had been searching nearby for them. They happened to hear the cries at that moment, and pulled Chris up with a chain. Utterly exhausted, Chris told his colleagues about the situation inside the pipeline. After asking the oil company to quickly send rescue teams, he lost consciousness and collapsed. When Chris woke up, he found himself lying on a hospital bed, but when he asked about the rescue progress, he received an infuriating answer. The company had indeed sent people to inspect the seabed, and there were responses when the pipeline was struck, but because the oil pipeline was too narrow, unless the entire pipeline was dismantled, a rescue was simply impossible. In order not to harm the company's interests, management decided to abandon the rescue plan. 5 days later, the Peria company announced that the 4 bodies were intact, but all had perished. When forensic doctors conducted the autopsies, they found that after Chris escaped, the others had endured for a long time by sheer willpower, only dying one after another on the 4th day. No one can imagine what kind of pain and despair they experienced before death. Even Chris could not forgive himself. After being discharged, Chris was overwhelmed with guilt, and took Peria Oil Company to court, hoping they would receive severe legal punishment.